Welcome back. This morning, you have heard some of the unique challenges that we face in combating human trafficking. As we prepare to meet those challenges, we are humbled and inspired by the courageous survivors whose resilience, resolve, expertise, and insights are essential to building on the momentum of our anti-trafficking efforts. We will now hear from two of those survivors, along with U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, Erica McDonald. Please help me in welcoming them to the stage. On June 11, 2018, Erica McDonald was sworn in as the United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota. U.S. Attorney McDonald was nominated by President Donald Trump on April 10, 2018, and confirmed by the U.S. Senate on May 24, 2018. As United States Attorney, Ms. McDonald is the top-ranking federal law enforcement official in the District of Minnesota. The office is responsible for prosecuting federal crimes in the district, including crimes related to terrorism, firearms, narcotics, child exploitation, human trafficking, financial fraud, healthcare fraud, and public corruption. The office is also responsible for representing the United States in affirmative and defensive civil cases, as well as assisting communities throughout Minnesota in appropriate community building efforts designed to enhance public safety. Before taking office, U.S. Attorney McDonald was a judge in Dakota County since 2009. U.S. Attorney McDonald served as an assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois and for the District of Minnesota from 2000 to 2009. She began her legal career in 1997 as a judicial clerk to Judge Hames Henry Alicia of the U.S. District Court in Chicago. She then joined the firm of Kirkland & Ellis in 1999. U.S. Attorney McDonald received her JD degree with honors from DePaul University College of Law and her BA degree from the University of Notre Dame. Please join me in welcoming U.S. Attorney McDonald and our survivor leaders.
It is truly my honor to be sitting here on stage with these two amazing and resilient women. It is an honor to be here to share their story, but also when you hear their inspirational words, you can take back what it is they want you to do and to understand from a survivor's perspective. This part of the program is called Survivors' Perspectives, but these two women are far more than survivors. They have prevailed, and you will hear their life stories and how they have prevailed throughout life and over their traffickers and over their situation. Each and every one of you is here today because you are called to end the scourge of human trafficking. Maybe you're a law enforcement officer and you're called to rescue the victims from their circumstances. Maybe you're a non-NGO or a service provider and you're called to aid and assist these victims as they become survivors. Maybe you're a prosecutor and you're called to hold the offenders accountable with the full force of the law, as you should. For whatever reason you are here today, you are called, and thank you for heeding that call. It has often been said that the measure of any society is how it treats the most vulnerable of its members. I suggest to each and every one of you that there are no more vulnerable members in our society than those of our human trafficking victims. These are individuals who've been exploited sexually, mentally, physically, and emotionally because of a vulnerability of some sort in their life. But these are also people who we hold dear, and I'm proud to live in a country who will not tolerate such exploitation. I'm proud to live in a country where we wrap our arms together, stand locked in solidarity to fight the good fight. I'm proud to live in a country where professionals such as you come together and bring your talents and abilities to help. And I'm proud to live in a country where survivors, prevailers like these women can come and speak to you, share their stories, not be judged, rather held high on a pedestal for having the courage to sit here today and provide the inspiration and the words to you that will let us all believe, to quote Barbara, one person can make a difference. We can all make a difference. Now, I'll tell you before I walked out here, I've got Barbara and I've got Barbara Jean, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about their bios. But I asked Barbara Jean, I said, all right, how you feeling? You need water? We got water out there. She said, I don't need water as much as I need Kleenex. So I got a thing of Kleenex right here, but I hope you all show the love, because these folks are going to share with you some pretty horrendous things that happened to them. They are both public speakers. They're accustomed to being asked these difficult questions, but it's still hard, because anytime they have to speak about what happened to them, it is difficult, but again, inspirational. Barbara Amaya, who I will refer to as Barbara the whole time, she's an advocate, a trainer, and an author of a best-selling memoir entitled Nobody's Girl. She is a survivor leader in the movement against human trafficking and to end all violence against women and children. She has a background in education and holds a credential in early childhood development. She has been actively campaigning to raise awareness on these issues, and she tells the compelling story of the experiences and the trauma and the adversity that she suffered while being held in human trafficking conditions from the age of 12 to 24 in the streets of New York City. Her story is truly inspirational. She is routinely called upon at this time in her life to provide information to lawmakers, to give her expert testimony, and to testify in multiple states' assemblies in support of legislation to support human rights and services for human trafficking victims. She was instrumental in the passage of the Washington, D.C. Safe Harbor Bill. She was also instrumental in the amendment of Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. She's a training consultant. She mentors survivors of trauma in human trafficking. In 2014, Barbara was honored with the sought-after James B. Hunter Human Rights Advocacy Award for her work in advocacy. Her experiences have been interpreted in works of art, and most importantly, I'll tell you, she's got a TED Talk, and I had the opportunity to watch it. It has over 1,200,000 views, where Barbara talks about her experiences, not only what she went through, but also who it was that gave her the courage to get herself out of her situation, and she'll talk about that today. Seated to my left is Barbara Jean Wilson. She was born and raised in Flushing, New York, and she moved to Virginia 15 years ago. For the past 15 years, Barbara has provided support as the executive coordinator in the legal division of Freddie Mac. Pretty cool job, although I just found out she's going to be retiring March 31st to be able to spend more time related to her work and her calling by the Holy Spirit to speak on issues of human trafficking and educate folks. But in 2011, she published her first book. It's entitled Mute, But Now I Speak. And her testimony reveals how she overcame the pain of childhood sexual abuse and then human trafficking. She's been a featured guest speaker at many events and across the U.S. and the United Nations. The events focus heavily on bringing awareness to the challenges of human trafficking and the sexual, physical, and mental abuse that these individuals suffer. In addition to receiving numerous awards for her hard work and dedication at Freddie Mac, she was nominated as Woman of the Year by Women's Interactive Network. She's been a featured panelist. She was recently awarded her Special Service Community and Positive Influence Made to the Many Lives through her works by the WALSA Project, WPI. She's an active member and speaker for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, headquartered here in DC. In September of 2003, Barbara Jean enrolled at Strayer University and graduated with a BA in June of 2008. Additionally, she's an active member of the Board of Directors of Just Ask Prevention, member and officer of Board of Directors of WALSA Project, Inc., as well as alumni secretary and historian at Strayer University. Welcome, and please show the love for each of our survivors/prevailers who are here with us today. Rather than, we sat and the three of us talked about the best way to present their stories, and rather than each kind of going into a detailed account, we thought the better course of action, it was if I asked them some pointed questions and they provide answers, so that we can make sure that each one of them has the ability to address the different parts of their lives. And I think when you see the intersection of what occurred to them, as well as how they were able to exit themselves, you'll find great similarities that you can take back when you're thinking about your work and how to approach your work. And so first, Barbara Jean, I'd like to ask you, how did the trafficking of you begin?
I was 8 years old when it began. And, you know, when I was sitting in the audience listening, you know, everyone's talking about strangers and, you know, pimps on the street. I was trafficked by my mother from the age of 8 to 13. And instead of me going out, she would bring the men home. And I was fed drugs, I was fed alcohol. The one time that I had the courage to say no, one of them put a gun to my head and said, "No one tells me no." And when I was pleading and begging with my mother for it to stop, all she could say was, "That's how the rent is getting paid." And so I had nowhere to seek help. And I just dealt with it. That's how I lived. And through it all, it was wrong for what she did, but I loved her through it all. I loved my mother through it all. I forgave her. But it damaged me in a lot of ways. It damaged me in so many ways.
Ultimately left home.
Well, I got thrown out. And in order to survive, I did what I only knew. And I became a prostitute. And I got on drugs, deeper into drugs, and selling my body. Because at this point, probably by the time I was 15, I was pregnant with my daughter. And so I had to find a way of taking care of her. What saved me was I OD'd. And
How old were you at this time?
probably 17.
Okay.
And the Holy Spirit came to me and said, "Enough is enough." And I made a promise to God that if He got me through it, I would spend the rest of my life sharing my story to help other victims, but to bring understanding and awareness to those who don't know what we go through. When you see those young girls and those young boys out there on the street, they're not out there because they want to be. They're out there because they have no place to go. They don't trust anyone. My trust was broken by my mother. And so who do you go to? in bringing men into the house. I can't run to the police because a couple of them were police. So who do you go to? So I want you to think long and hard when you see them out there, that they're just looking for someone that they can just ask the question, can I help you? I didn't want to do this because it meant sharing my life, but I made a promise to God. And the more he sends me out, so much has been buried, the more he brings up. They had me do things, and this is before going into the street. They had me do things that would never put another human being through, and my mother is behind it all. You know, even when I was going to school, the teachers, instead of noticing the change, they just start calling me names. They start calling my mother up. We're kicking her out of school. They should have been asking the question, you wasn't like this yesterday, what happened? And it got to a point, I hated 3 o'clock because once I got out of school, I knew what was going to happen when I got home. And so I had to make a decision. I had to decide, do I go home and start working, or do I wait until after 3, go home and get beat with an extension cord? Got beat with an extension cord, but still had to provide the service. And that is not the life that anyone should have to live, and especially a child.
That's right. Barbara, I know that you have some similarities in your experience, but if you could tell us, how did the trafficking of you begin?
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm really honored to be here today and to share what I can with everyone here and hopefully make a difference today. It always strikes me how many similarities there are between survivors of trafficking. You know, we're all unique individuals, right? But there's so many similarities. I'm from Fairfax, Virginia, and when I share that, you know, people often go, "Well, how did human trafficking? How did this? You know, what are you talking about?" The family was very dysfunctional. You know, it was a beautiful home on the outside, but not on the inside, perhaps. You know, I experienced things that no other child, you know, ever should experience ever in this lifetime. There was abuse happening, and I don't even remember when that started, but it was probably really early on. So it was total dysfunctionality. I tried to tell my mother about it, but it just didn't. No one was listening to me. I was taken out of the family, and I went through all the systems, child welfare, foster care, juvenile justice, you know, all of the systems and many different institutions. I began running away from the home, and I'd come to Washington. I began running away from home, and I don't know what's happening here.
It might be your hair in my.
Okay, wow, the hair does that? Okay, sorry. So I began running away from home. I was 12. This summer I turned 12, barely 12. And I would run away, and sometimes I'd be reported missing, and sometimes I wouldn't because of the total dysfunction, alcoholism, and all these things happening. And I actually saw reports from different entities where they report me missing or they wouldn't. Eventually I was put into foster care, and every place they put me in, I would run away from. I'd managed to get out of. And you know, every child needs certain things in life, right? They need food, shelter, love, attention, discipline. I wasn't just running away, I was running to find something. And traffickers are predators. They prey upon the vulnerable. They prey upon vulnerabilities, right? So we know that. We all know that. One day I was in DuPont Circle, sitting there. I didn't see that. But anyway, I was sitting there, and this young woman approached me, and she started talking about, how I must be hungry. She took me back to her place, and there was her boyfriend, who was actually her trafficker. They started training me for purposes of prostitution. I was 12 years old. Eventually, one day, they took me to a corner. This man comes walking down the sidewalk, and I wasn't sure what was happening. I was so needy. I was a child. And I probably would have robbed a bank if they wanted me to. I did whatever they asked me to do. They were also giving me a pill, which today I think was some kind of benzodiazepam, Valium or something. Anyway, this trafficker person, I didn't know he was a trafficker. I'd never even heard that word before. This man comes walking down. They kind of handed me off to him. Money exchanged hands. I found out much later that he had people in major cities funneling him, young people like I was.
And this was on the corner of 14th and I, right?
Yeah,
here in
14th
DC.
and I streets, yeah. And he took me to New York. And on the way to New York, he began the process of the formation of the trauma bond. He began asking me and try to portray himself as my protector, right? But at the same time, he made sure that I saw he had a Glock in his belt, which scared me to death. I hadn't experienced that yet. So he was starting that formation of that trauma bond.
And how old are you at this time?
I was almost 13. So we get to New York City, and he had many other young people in different hotels around New York. He had 2 apartments in Manhattan on either side, east side, west side. And he would move everybody all around all the time to keep off balance and isolated in that world. And he had another young woman take me out into the track in New York City, actually over by the plaza at that time, and just, I'd already been in kind of immersed in that world in Washington, right? That was the whole plan. And I just did whatever they wanted. And the violence got really bad. In the beginning, obviously not, but it got very, very bad with him because of the certain rules and all those rules and regulations that he had about the quota, how much money you're supposed to bring if you don't bring it. He would beat me with a wire coat hanger and all that stuff. Throw me down the stairs, throw me out of a car, throw me. In New York, the violence occurred at his hands and also at the buyer's hands. I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've been everything you could probably think of or not think of. When someone thinks they're buying you, they think they can do whatever they want to you. And I took on his worldview of viewing the rest of the world as a dollar sign. So when somebody thinks they're buying you, you'll do whatever they want to get that money from them, right? And remember, I'm growing up as this is occurring.
Let me ask you this. At one point, you were hoping that you were going to exit the life when you were arrested and you were sent to Rikers Island.
Rikers Island prison, right? And
can you tell the folks in the audience what happened at Rikers Island when you thought your family was coming to get you?
So in the streets of New York, the trafficker told me, you're probably going to be arrested someday. And I'm going to be arrested. And the police would come through the track, and everybody would run and scatter. But, you'd be arrested numerous times, probably. And one day, I had talked to an undercover police officer, and I went to 100 Center Street to the court, and next thing I know, I'm on the bus to Rikers Island Prison. And at that point, I was, 15 or 16, and I had a horrible heroin habit at that point. And I was 2 days in, probably, by the time they take me to Rikers Island. And I was very sick physically. And I broke through the programming and all the programming that he'd enforced onto my brain. I broke through the programming in Rikers Island, and I said, I'm not 21. My name's not Susan Clarkson or whatever. I'm Barbara Mai. I'm from Fairfax, Virginia, and I want out. Call my parents. They didn't believe me, of course, but then they did believe me, and they said, you're okay. We contacted your family, and they're coming to pick you up. And I had all this flood of emotions because I'd been gone for so many years, and I don't know what they told my parents. And I had shame, horrible shame. This is all my fault. I don't know what they told them, and just not even happiness that they were coming to pick me up. It was just walking down that hall, going into that room to see my mother and father from Fairfax at Rikers Island, and it was horrible. And I had all these emotions, and I opened the door to the room. I'm sorry. And I walked into the room, and it was my trafficker standing there. It was. I don't know. I don't know today, to this date, how that happened. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if I'll ever know how that happened, because I don't know how that happened. But yeah, there he was. And I can't say, I said, no, I'll just stay here in Rikers Island prison. I left with him because really, what I really wanted to do was go get more heroin. And, I found out many, many years later that my parents went to the prison. I missed them by 10 minutes. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. I know that for the interest of time, 'cause
Yeah, I know.
I want to make sure that people hear, because it's important. Who was it that gave you the inspiration to get out of your situation?
So, by 15 or 16, I was addicted to heroin. It wasn't the trafficker who gave me the heroin. He had no reason to control me any more than he already was controlling me. It was a young woman out on the track that introduced me to heroin, and it numbed my brain and my body to the existence that I was suffering. Right. So by the time I was 23, 24, I'm 5'9", 99 pounds, probably going to die. I knew that. I knew I had to do something. And I pulled myself into a clinic, a drug clinic, over on the Lower East Side. I hadn't seen him for a while, and I really wasn't trying to find him, the trafficker. I don't know where he was then. So I pull myself into this drug clinic, and I go in there, and the young woman at the front desk, she wasn't a counselor, she wasn't a therapist, she wasn't a doctor, she wasn't an attorney, she was the receptionist. I went in there asking for help, which was very hard to do. And I went in there, and she gave me eye contact. And she talked to me like a human being. And I felt it flood over my body. She really treated me like a human being. She cared. I felt like I mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
You did matter.
And I really didn't... I don't remember feeling like that, maybe ever. So she really just asked me questions. What do you, just treated me like a human being. She took me to lunch. She bought me clothes to go on a job interview. She asked me what I liked, and I said I liked animals or whatever. She set me up a job interview at a veterinary clinic. I didn't get the job. That was the last thing I knew how to do. But anyway, I went on the interview. And because of that, because of her taking time out of her day to treat me like a human being, she propelled me out of New York City. And I never went back until 2013 to vacate the convictions. But that's a whole long story. Yeah.
I know we've got about 5 minutes
I know,
left.
sorry.
I'm hoping, no, that's okay. I want to make sure that I have a couple more questions for each of you that I think really be important for the audience to hear. Barbara Jean, as you're speaking with folks out here, and they're going to go back to their work, and they're going to speak with individuals who find themselves in a state of human trafficking, can you tell them what best advice you have for dealing with victims, soon-to-be survivors / prevailers?
To just take the time and notice any changes. Listen to the conversation. And even if a victim approached you, I had one dear friend, she's a friend to this day. She said God had told her that I was her assignment. Whatever she says to you, whatever she does to you, do not take it personal. She needs someone to believe in. She needs someone to trust. And the things that I've said, the things that I've done, she loved me even more. She said, you can be anything you want to be. You can become, because I see greatness in you. And what I learned from all of that, and I want all of you to know, if you don't know what real pain feels like, ask me. Because not only do I know what real pain feels like, but I don't want to put that pain on anyone else. All I want to do is be respected. All I want is to respect you until you walk in a victim/survivor shoe. You will never know what they've been put through. And as a survivor, speaking on behalf of the victim, you can end up living a productive life. Do not be ashamed of what you were put through, because you're not to blame. Even if people walk away from you, because there were those who walked away from me, but then there were those who stayed. I learned later on, some of the ones that walked away, it had nothing to do with me. I was opening up maybe some wounds that they needed healing from. And my voice, I'm using my voice to bring an understanding to those who don't, to the world. There are a lot, you could be sitting next to one, whether it's a male or female. You have to be careful in the things that you say, because you don't know what could trigger an individual. I also tell folks, you got to be careful when you're embracing someone. Because I actually shared this with my pastor in church. You know, everybody's always hugging. Maybe they should shake hands, because you don't want to be rude, but it could also trigger things that are happening, one, or someone could actually be, they have a whole different agenda. So my thing that I want all of you to walk away from is to know that we too are humans, we have feelings, and we just want to be respected and loved and not looked upon as the prostitute that I was once, the drug addict that I was once, living on the street. Don't look at me like that. Look at me as someone as, you know what? God gave someone an assignment to pull her out. Maybe we need to be given an assignment for someone out in the street to help pull them out and give them a second chance at life. Because it could be any one of us. And that's what I want everyone to walk away with knowing. To just take the chance and just love us. We're people, we're human. We were all created by the same God. Some just had to go through unimaginable things while others got to live the loving life. And I will say that, you know, to this day, my mother went on to be with God in 1993. I still love her to this day. I still respect her to this day. She asked for forgiveness. I forgave her. I forgave my abusers, because in order for me to sit before you and share my life, and it's also part of the healing, I had to forgive. In order for me to go forth, I had to forgive.
Do you plan to stay here the whole day? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be here the whole day as well?
I think so.
Okay.
I'll try. Yeah.
And how are we doing on time?
Wait, we could keep going.
Probably, okay. I have one more question I think is really important to ask Barbara, because we're talking about it quite a bit, is we think about the emotional trauma, we think about the physical trauma, but we don't think necessarily always about the long-term health impact that this has on individuals. And even today, I'll turn it to Barbara to explain that conversation that we've had and how important I think it is for folks to understand when you're going back to your respective works and professions.
Yeah, we were talking about this, and I could speak about this for like 8 hours, but that's not going to happen. So, you know, I've been to many different summits, conventions, conferences, events, universities, and it struck me, wait, look at the agenda. Nobody's talking about health that much. Survivors of sex trafficking and health. What happened? What's the impact on this person's mental and physical health? Perhaps maybe it's touched on more of the mental health, but not the physical health that much. I mean, maybe I've been to the wrong events, but I'm just saying, it's not like a regular thing on agendas that I've noticed. And for me personally, I remember once I went to speak at Princeton. This young person's running across the campus, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can't breathe. You know, I have congestive heart failure, I have this, I have that, I have all these multitude of health issues that I never talk about because I'm real good at compartmentalizing everything. I can't, just hold up, I have to sit down for a second, right? It just needs to be looked at in more depth. You know, I'm gonna share some personal information since we're doing deeper personal stuff anyway. But I survived uterine cancer in 06, 07, which, you know, if I could prove this, it'd be really great, but I can't. But anyway, I know it's directly related to the trauma that I experienced. Directly, it was no mystery to me why I had uterine cancer. Right? Prior to that, I had to have surgery to even conceive and have a child because of all the trauma to my body, right? So survivors of this particular, especially this particular type of trafficking, sex trafficking, but you know, all people that survive any type of trauma, their body physically and mentally is very much impacted, yeah? So it needs to be looked at in more depth, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Can I add to that?
You may.
Just like Barbara, my whole insides, because from the age of 8 to 13, and these are grown men, my whole inside was damaged. So, I mean, even having my daughter, by the grace of God, because I, too, was diagnosed with cancer of the uterus, but my doctor had wondered, how were you able to have a child? And I said, it's only by God's grace. And my daughter, Tawana LaShawn Wilson, I shared with her first what I went through. She is my biggest cheerleader, and she says, Mommy, you need to write a book and tell your story, and I support you 100%. Because people can't be healed if you keep your mouth closed. And so, because of her, and because God birthed her out of me, who wasn't supposed to have a child, He used her to help me to get to where I am.
And she's watching live stream today, correct?
If she's not sleeping, because she's on the night shift.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, these two amazing, as I said, resilient and beautiful people sitting next to me on the stage, I couldn't be more proud to sit here by them. They are going to be here for the rest of the day. They are very candid and open about their experiences. They want us to understand what they've been through so they can help others to avoid such circumstances. And to quote Barbara, one person can make a difference, and we can make a difference. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Wow. I cannot express the gratitude to our survivor leaders for just coming here and telling their stories. We are so incredibly grateful for the insights that survivor advocates and trauma experts have imparted to us as we seek to expand our expertise in survivor-centered, trauma-informed anti-trafficking strategies. We are looking forward to strengthening our existing partnerships and forging new ones. Please join me one more time in giving them a round of applause for just showing bravery and speaking to us today.